want to go.
Yeah, we'll start and we'll get as far as we can. Turn off the. I'll sit here and cough on the microphone for the rest of the meetings for this week and next.
Bizarre.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I tried. There's no guilt.
I would like to publicly say that I took Le'Veon Bell for my first pick, and it's not working out already.
Okay.
Apparently not.
All right, gentlemen, the microphones are now on. Sean Michael, if I can make a suggestion to you, when you are talking, lean in and talk to the mic when you're done. Okay? All right, Mr. Chairman, we are all right. Okay, live from Milton, Saturday night.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. I will call to order the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board special called meeting for Wednesday, September 5th. And take roll. Scott, present. Joe? Joey?
Yes.
Yes. Phil?
Present.
Sean Michael?
Present.
Thank you. Present. And walking in the door, Jason Alberici. Present, Jason?
Yes.
Present, okay.
Mr. Chairman, we have heard from Coach Ron Hill. He is in transit, and I've also received an email from Mr. Shannon. We expect him as well.
Okay, great. So we've got a quorum of 5. We can certainly begin today's meeting and welcome my fellow Parks and Board member attendees to tonight's meeting. Thanks for your attendance. To those who may be watching at home or watching this meeting afterwards, thanks for participating in our meeting today. Next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next item on today's agenda is approve today's meeting agenda, which has been provided by Mr. Craig for our benefit. If no one has a comment on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve to the agenda. I'll second it.
Motion by Phil, second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved and carried and approved. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the July 19th meeting, which is in your packet. I was not here at that meeting, but the minutes look good to me.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 19th, 2018.
Motion by Jason. I hear a second.
Second.
Second by Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. The minutes of the July 19th meeting. Next item tonight is public comment. Mr. Craig, do we have any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, we have no public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along. We will now go to committee reports. Today we'll attack them in reverse order. How about Eagle Sticks? Joey and Jason, any updates to provide for the
Season starts Saturday, right?
Season starts Saturday.
This
Yep.
weekend seems to be going well. Practices are good.
And I'm not at Bell right now, but I did thank you for, I guess there were some requests for mowing. So that was at Northwestern. So that was good because for some clinics, I think they were doing. I haven't been to Bell, so I haven't seen. But yes, season starts this weekend.
Yeah, it seemed to be. The fields looked good over at Birmingham Elementary, Birmingham Falls. I was over there the other day.
And I did ask the coach at Birmingham Falls, and he said the field looks there nice too.
Yeah,
And we
I was
had-
over there yesterday. Field looks good.
Good, because that was, last year was a little rough, but hey, good start for sure.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I do want to advise both of you, please, as you're talking with Eagle Sticks, we have the permission and the funding to put up temporary lights when the time changes. So you have to give me a little bit of advance notice on it, but we're ready to go if you guys need it. That was the commitment that was made a year ago when there was some discussion that some concerns about having girls not having access to lit fields.
Do we know when the fields, when that happens? When is daylight savings?
It's usually the first Sunday after Halloween.
So more than likely, that would be the first Sunday, that would be the last weekend of their season.
But we don't, we don't have to wait that long.
But I'm saying that
Right.
they may not need them, right? Because the season ends the 4th typically.
So last season, when does the season end again?
The 4th.
The 4th of October?
November.
November. So when the time changed, it was October, correct?
Yeah,
No,
like that
it
last.
typically changes the first Sunday after Halloween.
Yeah. So that would, typically we
Right.
wouldn't need it, right? That for-
So I don't know, I do remember the last 2 weeks, it's just the last 2 weeks.
Leading up to it.
Leading up to it, that we did start having some issues at Birmingham Falls. I'm not a scientist. I don't know if it was, does it get darker? So,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it definitely, it was not
In
a
the
problem.
fall, it gets darker earlier.
Yeah.
In the spring, it gets lighter,
So the reality
Earth
is,
and moon.
no, but the reality was it was only the last couple weeks.
Right.
I know, and I've publicly done this. So, yes, I did it to myself.
Jim, if they need them, what kind of heads-up notice do you need?
If I could get, a week's notice, that would be great.
And question, it was Birmingham Falls, it was Northwestern.
Those would be the only two places, right?
And
Well,
those
we
are-
have permission at Birmingham Falls.
Oh, it wasn't Birmingham
Excuse
Falls.
me. I just misspoke. I apologize.
Right.
We did not get permission at Birmingham Falls.
Correct.
We got permission at Cogburn Woods. We got permission at Hopewell Middle and Northwestern Middle.
Okay, and I think boys are playing at those places, right?
I don't believe we have any overflow at Hopewell Middle or Cogburn.
Okay.
So the opportunity exists that for girls playing over at Birmingham Falls, you could conceivably move them over to Hopewell
Okay.
Middle
To a lit
in
field.
October, and then we could put some lights
Wow,
on.
okay, that's interesting. Okay,
So we have a lot of flexibility here.
okay, good to know.
So that needs to get back to Eagle Sticks to make that happen. And ultimately to North Georgia Rec for scheduling,
Yes.
if you're going to make that change. Good. Anything else for Eagle Sticks?
That's it
For
from
the
me.
kickoff? Good. We're missing our two other liaisons. Jim, do you want to share, do you have updates for the Milton Steelers or Hopar? Do you want to table those and come back to them?
I propose we table them and give the
Okay.
respective representatives a chance to come back.
Fair enough. I don't,
Do we have to motion?
nah, we'll come back to them in the meeting. I'm not worried. We're not putting them off. So that being the case, we'll move to unfinished business.
Mr. Chairman, at your request that we sent out the presentation that was given to council at the workshop on the 30th. I also have that queued up here, and of course, being that you can see it on your screens, it might be easier.
Yeah.
So if you would like, I can go through that presentation now, and your call.
Something comes to mind that I did out of order, so I should back up. So it's my mistake. We should actually let Sean introduce himself to everyone here since we
Sean
didn't-
Michael.
Yeah, Sean Michael. Sorry that we didn't take the time to do that at the beginning of the meeting. So let's, I put you on the hot spot, let's have you introduce yourself, Sean Michael, to the board and the city of Milton. Tell us a little bit about where you come from.
And the hundreds of thousands of people watching live on right now.
No pressure.
Yeah, and you're.
But at least I didn't have a daylight savings question,
Yeah.
so.
But
You're off
did
to a
you
good
stay at
start.
Holiday Inn Express last night?
No, unfortunately not. My name is Sean Michael Janssen.
currently coaching the Milton Eagles over at the NAFL. I've coached at Hopewell the past 3 years. Been involved with sports my entire life, and just kind of happy to help out and help the community.
Thanks. We're glad to have you here, and it's a blessing. One of the things that the city needs, and one of the things we're fortunate to have, is active board members with active families and programs, and that gets us really close to feedback and good about things we do. So thanks and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Let's go back to unfinished business. So we went over this presentation now 3 weeks ago. Does anybody want Jim to go through it for us tonight, or would you like to just kind of move into some discussion around the topics that are in front of us?
I personally don't need it, but if anyone else does, I'm not opposed to
Okay.
reviewing it again.
Don't need it either.
Good. Good.
Specifically to the presentation, no. I think the discussion might bring up conversation of slides, but
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Fair enough.
But if Sean Michael wants to hit high points of it, I don't know what we might be able to do that in the discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through the slides today,
Okay.
so I mean, I kind of have the presentation, I guess, but yeah, when we get up to slides, that's fine by me.
Great. So we'll refer to it, Jim, then as we need to, because I'm sure there's a couple. So I don't know if there's a specific order to what we, the unfinished business. I guess let's talk about goals first. Goals got raised and some feedback from the joint session we have with City Council. Jim reminded me, and I don't know that I brought it with me, department goals.
You mean the one you made up, the chart? Give me a few minutes, I'll bring it out to you.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that I really need it. But the question was, we should have them, and the fact of the matter is we have them. I wouldn't chase them on a practical matter. Okay, man, I don't think it's that critical, Jim. I think a practical matter of department goals. We want to support recreation in our community. From where I sit, one of my views of it is, I think a practical matter is we need to fill our fields that we currently own and or control through the IGA. That should be sort of a goal of every decision that we look at. And I think that the goals of the department support that. And as we go into discussing capacity and MOU, we should be thinking about, if we own a field, own a facility, we should be doing things to push people there, because we've already invested in that. So that residents are paying expenses towards it. So I think that's one of the overriding thoughts about goals. As if anybody's got something else they want to share, I don't think there's really a big action step on goals for unfinished business. But I'll if anybody's got another comment on that, feel free to throw it out right now. Or otherwise, we'll move on a little bit.
Nope, I don't think that's it.
Okay. In the area of
Excuse me,
capacity planning,
Mr.
there was a
Chairman?
lot in the presentation.
Excuse me, I just want to let you know, I've just received a text from Mr. Shannon. He's delayed, but on his way.
He's the what?
Delayed, but on his way.
Okay, great. In the area of capacity planning, there was a lot of presentation by other partners in the meeting with us, and then we shared that information with council, essentially saying we're at or near capacity in about every sport that we have today. So I think the good news for us is we've put the council on notice and engaged them at the table that they need to be thinking about that topic. Mm-hmm. Jim had provided in the presentation the slide that said identified community wants and needs, and it kind of lists some of these topics. And I think that a message from us as we get into our final comments around capacity planning may be able to be a little directional to the council about we should do some of this before we do some of that, right? That would be sort of my thought process for capacity planning. I don't know that there's anything, again, absolutely.
You're talking about per provider?
Per provider, per field.
Per field,
Yeah,
or
right.
sport. Okay,
Per sport, right? Because I don't know there's anything we can really, as a parks board, do at the moment that fixes capacity planning. We've got to either start with more efficient use of the fields we have and filling them, and then get into ideas of what are our options for expanding or contracting in an IGA form for other fields. So
is this a fair question at the city level, or with, or is this the only group working on this right now? Meaning, is there any thought to this, either field spaces with, I know we're not allowed to, I know that land purchases don't go through here. You don't know about it till it's done, but are there discussions, do we know that the council is having, maybe? Or is this where it's going to start? And is this the discussion that's happening?
The discussion is typically multifaceted. For example, we've got the Green Space Acquisition Group that is tasked with finding opportunities for purchases of land in a compliance with the Green Space Bond,
Right.
which is passive and other use parks, but nothing active. So that's one way that the city looks at acquisition. Another way, of course, is opportunities that are discreetly presented to the city, such as the Milton Country Club.
Correct.
However, in terms of the active field opportunities, that is something that I am tasked with in my opportunity, in my role, and it's up to me to find out where these opportunities exist. And then, as they become aware of them, I present them to city management, and from there, elected officials make recommendations, yes or no. There's no doubt in my mind that City Council is looking for not necessarily specific parcel recommendations from you guys, as much as things that we need to be looking for in preparation for the future. Hey Coach. All right, so yes, you guys are an active part of the acquisition process, but yours more is the, shall we say, the first level, the identification of the need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing, the reason I was thinking about it is we once talked about potential of using the Fulton County fields. Is that off the table, or is that something that's still potential of working something out? Is that even in the conversation, or should we just focus on the what would be at the fields and the programs that we're going to offer through the MOU and stuff?
The opportunity to expand any of our MOUs always exists, and in some ways has the potential to be very favorable, in that you have land that already may already be leveled of trees, or may already be flat, may already have parking, may already have bathrooms, may already have lights. So, put simply, we're open to partnerships where the partnerships make mutual sense.
Okay, yes.
So the answer is yes.
Okay.
And it's not limited just to the school properties. There's other opportunities that exist here in the community, and we are pursuing them as well.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
So it's 7:18, and I welcome Coach Hill and Vice Chair Shannon to join us at our meeting. We are in the business of getting to our unfinished business discussion. Then we'll come back to you guys for details about committee reports. And we've already a little bit discussed department goals, and we're kind of just touching on capacity planning from our previous meeting. So to your point, Joey, I think one of our goals could be to be rather prescriptive, to say to the city as we move out of this meeting, to say, hey, if money comes available and it's the right land, do this type of field before you do this type of field. We would have that certain purview if that's something we felt strongly about, based on what we heard from our partners. We know from the prior survey that we've identified numbers of fields and needs, so that part's sort of already been covered, so we could offer that. Other thoughts on capacity planning? Dave, Ron, you're jumping in late, but we're putting you on the spot. We're just kind of having an open discussion for a minute.
Purchase more land. I guess we've already covered that in my absence, but I think that's That's what I would advise.
Yeah, try and find more big, flat, buildable lots, right?
Flat buildable lots. It's like, all this little land across the street from Selma Memorial.
Okay. Yeah, yippee. So let's move to talk, before we go into the MOU per se, let's turn to talk a little bit about programming in the city. I know I forwarded this out a little bit prior. We had a lot of agreement on what should be covered in our sort of what is our program, what is Milton offering. So let's see if we can wrap our heads around tightening down what we should offer that we're not, because there was a little bit of variance. So things that came to summary comments from the input you all provided looked like swim lessons and learn to swim was something that was like low-hanging fruit. We have a pool. We could certainly be offering that simply and easily. That was one that came to mind.
Mr. Johnson, do you have a copy of what he's?
I do. Yeah.
So that one was sort of a easy one. Everybody kind of jumped on that one. The next two most popular should offer items from everybody was teen basketball and cheerleading, based on everybody's collective input. Talk about for a moment. Talk about teen basketball different than what we're currently offering as basketball. Maybe I should get that clarification first, Jim, from you as it relates to our current provider.
Yes. The opportunity for teen basketball, I'm not exactly sure how it was defined here, but I do know that our current program provider, Mr. Coleman, Halftime Sports, is looking to expand the programming. And Tom, are you familiar with how many grade levels he's doing now? Is he going through 8th grade? 9th? This teen basketball program, I don't know if it was referring to the Alpharetta model where teams form and they have their own, shall we say, city-sanctioned league. So we'd have to explore what we're looking to do, but from a standpoint of trying to be a program provider, any opportunities we give to teens is a positive thing, and I think we should pursue those opportunities.
Okay. How does that match?
We are a bit weak in our programming of teens. But then again, we also have 2 large high schools here in the area that offer lots of programming. But again, it's at the high school level. We're talking teenage at a rec level.
Right.
The question is, do we have any gym capacity that might happen?
I'm sorry?
Do we have any gym capacity there we could get a teen program? Because I would love to have a teen basketball program. I think that would, at a rec level. That's a good point. Like in
the off seasons, we could look at
fall.
Northwestern and Hopewell Middle.
It's a good point.
Okay. I like that space and limited offering. Sounds.
So Mr. Coleman does not use those courts in what's considered off-season? So he's not running his program during those seasons?
He does. He runs programming, but they're very small.
They are.
And there's plenty of capacity
For what a teen basketball league is
to add a gym or two to do teen league.
Right. Teens can go later too.
They're smaller programs, and typically he only runs them like 1 or 2 days a week on the off season. So the other days he could program.
Okay.
So when you do the teen, when you're doing that, is there a league or is this an internal program that would be, is there somewhere to play?
It'd probably be a house league, meaning he'd run it all himself.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
There's not.
For example, years ago, my son a group of his buddies got together and they signed up as a team to be in the league run by Alpharetta, and they have some fun with it. They goofball around, and my son convinced Alpharetta's Parks and Rec director that they had a sponsorship from Mr. Jass's construction company. And so he said, okay, you can put the name on the back. And so they wrote on the back of their shirts, Hugh Jass Construction Company. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so, and they've had some fun with it. They get one guy on the team who shows up wearing a jacket and tie as if he's the actual NBA coach, running the league. And, and it's mostly just goofball around.
Yeah.
Get them out there doing something.
I like that. So I'm okay. Teen basketball we can add. Let's talk about cheerleading for a second. Cheerleading in the Steelers program is limited participation. It seems like cheerleading tends to line up with football.
It tends
what does
to.
freestanding cheerleading look like? Or for those of us who are
Maybe
thinking about
competition cheer?
offering, I don't know. For those of us who are offering cheerleading, for the should be offering, what would it?
I would think as a recreation program, we're not looking for competition cheer. We're talking about intro to cheerleading,
Right.
which is really what recreation programming should be. The Milton Steelers did attempt it last year. Let me back up. They attempted it 3 years ago, moderate success, let it drop for a year, tried it again last year. It was not their strong suit, and they frankly asked to offer it, and we said okay, because they said that wasn't their forte.
Right.
And I respected them coming up and talking about that. So we don't have cheerleading right now. We've had the opportunity. One time we had a woman approach us about wanting to try and do some cheerleading, but was it gymnastics? But she also talked about cheerleading, didn't she? But anyway, that deal did not come through. Again, cheerleading could be taught at Bell Memorial Park, just as we don't have to have an indoor facility for that. So that's something we could offer.
Let me ask you this: to do cheerleading, when are they going to cheer? Where? I mean, if they're not going to be associated or affiliated with any teams, what is the purpose?
Well,
If you're not doing competitive to compete in cheerleading competitions, where are they going to cheer at? If the Steelers have their own cheer program,
they don't.
usually your cheer program goes to be associated with whatever program you're offering. So your cheerleaders would be assigned to the football teams,
Right.
age group wise. Are we talking about taking cheer and putting cheer squads out for the Steelers and the different basketball teams that do basketball for the city? And if that's the case, that's a great idea, because they're going to get to do and
Game
perform
time cheer,
stuff that
yeah.
they're doing, as opposed to just going somewhere and practicing once or twice a week and say, I do cheerleading.
Yeah. The Milton Steelers were not opposed to having someone else running cheer and being
Okay.
affiliated with their program.
Cool.
But they just were like, we don't want to run it.
Just leave it open.
It'd be fun to offer basketball. That'd be another
Yeah,
option to
really.
extend the
You
season.
could get it out there to lacrosse too. Get it out for every swim team, cheer. What do we do? Right? Swim team, we'll bring a cheerleading squad.
Okay.
We'll bring it into
They'd
basketball.
be out there
game.
with the baseball.
Yeah, well,
That's right.
baseball.
You get random
Shoot-
sports throughout the
shoot
year.
cannon for
Here,
t-shirts.
baseball. Get a group.
Baseball, heck yeah.
So I
They'd
did,
be
so
available
my,
on demand.
my daughter was able to do cheer with Kingsridge, even though we didn't go there. For the younger ones, they would let the little kids, they had a cheer practice and they cheered for the Kingsridge team.
Right.
You're right about having a place to go. The middle school kids, from what I'm hearing, some of the girls are doing, is it whatever program's going on right now, is 8th grade football.
Yeah, I would assume that
Yeah, middle
because of the
school.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade football-wise, the middle school probably goes through the
Right, so they're going through their teams.
through their school team.
So, but when you said basketball, that is an interesting, if you can find, or even with the Milton Steelers, if you can find someone to run it and there's a place to go, I see, there's definitely for the younger girls, I can see that being a need.
am.
Is there a demand? I guess the next question, is there a demand there? That I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
again,
We do know.
Yeah, we've only had one game so far this season for the NFL, but they have cheerleading programs where, they'll group, I don't know, maybe for kindergartners through second graders together and have them cheer at
rotate
2 or
through
3 of the
different-
games.
2 or 3, rotate through some games.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then they have different age groups going up, but it's more nondescript. It's not,
Yeah.
they're not associated with the feeder program. They're just NAFL cheerleaders, right? So it's not necessarily they're cheering for Cambridge or Milton or Alpharetta. They're cheering for all 3 of them in whatever day it's
And so
there.
they're just kind of randomly assigned to a game,
Yeah.
right? So I guess that comes the question is, would there be enough demand there if the city put it out there?
I mean, we do a program at our school for 1st through 4th grade because 5th grade starts middle school and they can do middle school cheerleading. And we do it Saturdays from 10 to 12. And it's flagged for 1st through 4th graders and 1st through 4th grade girls. Our varsity cheerleaders come out and
work with them.
and work with them, and they get to cheer on Saturday. They're out there for 2 hours on a Saturday for 6 Saturdays. And they pay like $200, $300, and they are having a ball.
Yep.
They do that for 2 hours once a week. I mean, we could do it in a modified thing with,
I mean, if there's an interest,
if there's an interest, because, I mean, there's a lot of girls. I mean, if you're not doing competitive cheerleading from a young age, one, you're not even making your middle school and high school cheerleading squads. You're not making
Right.
them.
If we want to introduce a program, how do we engage a provider? Like, how do we know who would even want to sign up to manage that? Has anyone engaged Milton? Has there been any requests?
We've had the occasional request for it. How we would get a program provider, I mean, it's the kind of thing we can put out an RFP and say we're looking for a program provider to help us with the following type of programming. We have not had to do that of late because the programs have got to been growing pretty well. Anything starts small. I remember 5 years ago, we had this very small program, and it was like I wondered if we were going to go anywhere with it. It was boys lacrosse, and we had a whopping 38 kids. I'm like, oh boy, this is. I don't know where this is going to go. Right? Well, where's it at now? Okay.
Right.
Basketball. The first year with basketball. First years with basketball, it was just going nowhere, and we went through 3 program providers. The one we have now is our 3rd program provider. The first one, who predates me, the program provider quit halfway through the program, and my predecessor and Tom's predecessor had to finish up running the basketball. The next group came along, and no traction. And then we finally got halftime sports, and again, 54 kids for a basketball league. And like, you're kidding me, right? Well, now we're at 330 kids in basketball in the winter. So, there's things we've put out and offered. We put out soccer, and that went nowhere. That went nowhere because Georgia Rush and United Football and Ambush Soccer, there was no market for a rec soccer program. So we like to try different things. Right. Just because we'd like to try something, if the opportunity presents itself, let's do it. But we have to listen to the market. And if the market's not there, I mean, the yoga program that we had years ago, that kind of dwindled and went away. And
I'll go back to capacity. I don't know where you would need.
Well, the good thing with cheerleading is that, I mean, they can do it in the middle spaces at Bell, right? I mean, they don't need to be on a field. They can be on the cement.
Right.
They can be
And
in
there
the
might
middle.
be
So there's no capacity constraint.
And then they're
concerns
just
there.
going to the game and being on the sideline afterwards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so
You may find a parent who's already in the program going to Alpharetta for gymnastics and decides that if they knew there was a home, they might take it on and want to lead it, right? Build it, who knows?
Yep.
So, okay, I'm
exploring,
worth exploring,
A
fair
lot of
enough.
moms and former cheerleaders. And,
Going down the should offer list, now we're into programs that were only picked once by all 7 of us, so no particular order. Volleyball came up. as something that we should offer?
Gymnasium.
Yeah. I would be.
Where would we host volleyball?
It's got to be in the,
Volleyball could be hosted in the gymnasiums at the Fulton County Schools. The traditional time for volleyball coincides with the traditional time for basketball, as it's considered an indoor sport during the winter.
But I thought, at the high school level, I thought volleyball is a fall sport here.
Yeah, girls.
Is it just girls, or is it?
Yeah, we don't have boys.
So, yeah, so, I mean, it is a fall sport, the tradition, for that very reason,
Right.
right?
Well, that's something we could do.
I saw a flyer to the middle school today for somebody else offering fall volleyball. And I forget where they were offering it. All kinds of, they had two or
Yeah.
three facilities listed. So it's out there. Also on the list for should offer was youth softball. Anybody pick that one? Want to tell me why? Without me calling you out?
Wasn't me.
I don't remember.
I'm not going to tell. Okay, maybe we won't.
Youth softball, again, that's an issue of where do you put it?
Where, right?
Right. Softball fields are different from baseball fields.
North Park.
Yeah.
Can we buy that?
I'll come look at one. The next two sound interesting and perhaps low-hanging fruit. So babysitter certification. Interesting topic. It's offered currently by the city of Alpharetta. Some of our residents are taking advantage of it.
Tie that in with,
Where is it? Babysitter certification.
We got a facility right across.
24 families. There's
Nice little building right here.
24 Milton
That offers
residents last year went and took advantage of it.
That'd be a place we could do it.
I mean, you can do it right over here in this little building here. I mean,
Yeah.
that I would think would be a
Is that a
fairly
one-
easy.
Is that a-
add
is that a
to
one-day
find the person
thing?
who does it from the Red Cross or from, because I'm sure they do some CPR training.
What about Milton
Or
Country
we
Club?
could do it for the registration calls for it. We could do it over at the Bethwell Center.
Yeah, or the country
Yeah.
club, you said, Milton Country Club, I don't know.
Now, right now, we're hesitant, until we go through the master planning of the Milton Country Club, I'm hesitant to even suggest it, because we haven't made a commitment that the building's going to stay.
But, I mean, that facility right there, it's perfect for it.
Yes.
I mean, for what they would have.
Extension course, I think, would be really.
Now, it's interesting. I think if you actually had babysitting on there, that you would get a lot more than you anticipate.
I think you'd get.
That'd be
good
good.
response.
Offer it once a quarter and have a class.
I mean,
and let
if
the
those,
schools know it.
if the kids that come to the younger kids that are like, hey, I'm actually Milton certified, they would love it.
well, if we go down that road, we might as well reach out to the Red Cross and do lifeguard training and CPR at the, what you just mentioned, not to mention the Milton Country Club event someday.
So we could roll that to CPR. Lifeguard training is a bigger.
Yeah,
There's money in that.
lifeguard, I was wondering about that.
It's a question mark, right? We're purchasing lifeguard services. Do we want to? Is there
No,
a
I have a-
market for certifying lifeguards? Is there?
Oh, yeah.
Now, I have an interesting question back to softball because our friend Van was really excited about softball. Is that something, if we had field space, would be a need in this area? Like we don't have soccer because Rush provides it. Is Alpharetta doing such a good job? And you know, Jim, because this is your thing. Is it something that Milton would even be able to touch?
Well, for those of you not aware, I, as an Alpharetta resident, I currently serve on the Alpharetta Youth Softball Board. Okay, so I have a little bit more of an inside picture there. The program is fairly evenly split between Alpharetta and Milton residents, and it's a healthy program. They've got about, typically they're running girls fall, they're running around 200 to 225 girls In springtime, they're running around 350 girls. I think if we tried to start our own program here, you would effectively cut that program in half, and you would find yourself struggling to create a competitive league. So,
Or you'd end up calling them to play games.
and you wind, and then you wind up calling them to create, and that I think you would get some resistance from the current folks on AYSA because they're like, what are we doing wrong? What is the reason for us? There are certain times where collaboration could work better than competition.
Absolutely.
So I could be wrong, but I mean, the girls' softball numbers have been fairly consistent. But I think it would be a challenge for both organizations to divide and then succeed.
I would agree. There's still over 300 kids in the spring.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been going on for that's.
And in the end of the
Steady.
day, I mean, our goal is to provide
That's
opportunities for people to play sports that they may not have, right? I mean, if you can, for a relatively reasonable amount, play somewhere else that's relatively close, right? Or within, in this case, probably in our city limits. It's like, we don't want to go compete against Rush Soccer and all the soccer places, right?
Yeah.
There's opportunities there, right? We don't need to compete against them for.
So to bring it to reality, I'm looking at Jim's numbers from last year. So Recreation Spring 2017 was 109 Alpharetta girls, 144 Milton girls, and 95 other girls. So we were almost half the program.
Which again
So
brings
it would
to
create a disbalance. So if the MOU, which we're going to get to discussing, says we'll cover softball fees for Milton residents and Alpharetta programs because it's not offered here, then they've got all the softball they can get to.
But the other side is that you kind of hit on it, to the greater good of everything, right? If you said, hey, we're going to put it out there and we just pretend we get all 150 of those girls, now you have two leagues that are kind of like,
Where are the softball fields?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
guess it's a non-starter.
we don't have fields, but if we sell, you're really diminishing the product for all 300 girls.
Correct.
As by doing that.
And it's
right?
a very good program. AYSA is.
So,
Switching off of softball, the other topic picked in the and the last topic picked in the should offer column was sport tykes. Sport tykes, which Tom, you might speak to. I guess this is like intro to sports summer camps. Is that how I understand it?
They're like little classes for very young children, like aged prior to intro to a sport.
Yeah, like 3 and 4 year olds.
Yes.
Yes, this is 2, 3, 4 year olds.
Yes, and they do all sports throughout the class, like each class. My daughter did it once. I think each class is a different sport.
Yeah, they'll remember that. Yeah.
59 residents participated in it last year from Milton.
How many?
59 out of 94 total. So there's some people interested in it. It's not the biggest, it's not the smallest program out there.
If there's the two sides to it would probably be in the fall and the spring. I would assume that's an outdoor thing. It would be something that would be done.
It's actually played in the gym.
Oh, they do it all in the gym there?
Even the soccer, and they play it all inside. They have outside space, but I remember my daughter always being in the gym.
It's 2 and 3
So
year
that
olds
would be,
learning
because
to
that's
hit
where I was
wiffle
going
ball.
with it, is it may be some way to use capacity at Bell during the day, right?
I mean, you could play it
You know.
anywhere, but that's where they do it at Alfred.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a way to
A
get,
soccer ball, hit a wiffle ball.
you're going out to Bell
Pro
Memorial
football.
from 10 to 11 to do tyke sports and, a way to add capacity to Bell that is not in the, golden hours.
I think this one fits in the bucket that Phil raised, though, that at 59,
Yeah.
do you find somebody who's really interested in wanting to offer it as
A
a
program.
volunteer
Yep.
or as a business opportunity for 59 people. This might be one of those that just given its size.
Correct. Doesn't.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we had a place for it and a home and a provider and everything else, but if it's already working, it's such a sign.
Yeah, I mean, the question becomes, is it,
Who really wants to do it? If somebody came to us with the idea that, hey, we could do this, well, then it might give them some space, but to create a freestanding program with somebody who would provide it,
If we wanted to, there's probably,
we don't have
sports tykes.
Alfred's probably using city staff to do it.
Outsourced,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that like a
Right.
national
Some
company?
college kid for the summer.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
That they're
$30 an hour.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's not. This is.
So, I mean, there's another group, Play Ball, that does the exact same thing. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's businesses out there that already do it, right? That's the
I mean,
only.
it's really kind of a mother morning out type thing.
Exactly. It's moms going to talk while their kids goof around.
And
If it's working, it may not be worth rebuilding for Milton residents.
Correct. I agree.
That'd be my gut. Okay, well, that gives us a few items on the should offer moving forward list. There's a bunch of aspirational, very popular items were picked. Summer day camp was popular. Open gym was popular. Gymnastics was popular. And then we start getting into the weeds on adult basketball, adult softball. I think those are the only other two that were really in the aspire. Then everything else kind of sort of felt a should not. And so I think we've got a list of things that we could at least consider moving forward. So that helps frame that discussion.
Mr. Chairman, have you had the chance to compare that with the results of the statistically valid survey of the wants and needs of the?
So that's an interesting idea on the wants and needs
Yeah.
list. So on wants and needs under highs, right? Youth out of school programs, camps before and after. So swimming lessons was certainly on this list. Youth sports, since we're talking about volleyball or teen, that's sort of a blanket cover. Those are a couple. Socialization with dogs is a very high priority here. We haven't addressed that for the city of Milton residents. I think those are the only two that we just talked about that fit on this list of high priority items. Everything else is either covered or we're not offering directly, like socialization with dogs.
I will also share with you that in the past we have looked at the idea of some type of STEM or STEAM camps, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And we've also looked at chess camps, chess type things. We came very close to a chess program back about 5 years ago, and then it got knocked down. But I think their winds have changed. I think we could look at parks and recreation as not necessarily being athletics as much as chess could be a recreational activity for someone. Not every kid's an athlete.
Is that covered in the, like I know at most elementary schools on the rec side? So I know my son did chess club, where it was a private outside organization that he stayed after school for an hour once a week or twice a week or whatever it was. I know that was being only here. So we've been to a couple schools because we've only been here in Milton for a couple years. At both of his schools, that was an opportunity. That would be my only question. Our parents just saying, "Hey, stay at school an extra hour this day of the week."
Yeah,
Makes it easier.
my kid had both my sons did their first chess club today.
Yeah.
So
We did
they
the
do
same
offer
thing.
it at all the schools.
So I
kids'
think
chess.
all the schools cover it. So again,
Yeah.
is there
a market?
Is there a market? Is there a need for it?
There could be summer chess camp.
I think
Yep.
it's called
Camp, right?
it's called kids chess. I think it's
It's just
It's
the group
sort of
that
it's
does
a
it.
timing
Yes.
issue. Right?
it's something I remember. Your predecessor, Mark.
Mark.
Mark, when I first started here, we had a list. We had to go out and put a list together of things that we thought we might want to talk about as far as programming here. And I remember one of the things we did mention was we did want to think about community businesses that are providing these services, not to like the chess programs. That was something I do remember us, we didn't want to hurt those chess programs just to have a chess program. So this could apply to a few of these things. We don't know. Is there a Milton business providing some of these things?
Well, I can tell you, I strongly believe that our relationship with Sperber Music will come to an end and not renew this year. But we have active interest from Bach to Rock to become a preferred program partner, and this would be a case of a different business model where they're providing all the facilities. We're not getting a commission, so to speak, as much as they're giving a discount for Milton residents to come participate there as an official Milton-type program. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you're saying, is there's some ways that we can partner with other businesses in the area that have the facilities and just we're helping promote them.
Right, and are doing a good job, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And don't compete, collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or maybe you find an unmet need that's a time of year that they could come in and help you be the provider for a need that you identify that exists, that didn't exist outside of school, perhaps, on those kinds of things. But you're right. I'm good with that. Let's. So that's a good review of what additional things we should be considering offering. So let's go to the heavy lifting and talk about the MOU for a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, what do we do with that list now? Do we then decide as a board to make recommendations to City Council? Is it up to us to decide on these programs and put out RFPs? What is the output of the short list? What do we do with it?
Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong. I've got a short list of programs: swim, teen basketball, intro to cheer, volleyball, fall, baby certification, CPR, lifeguard. We're sure once we all came to agreement on, right? So some of those are all things that we all agreed we could expand our offering. We have facilities for them. So it would be back to staff to start build out what would it look like or who would deliver it. Is that a fair assessment? If that's what we're, if we finish this discussion and recommend and charge you or charge parks to expand to these should offer programs.
I would suggest that a prudent path here would be to we're going to be meeting again in, I believe, 15 days for the regular September meeting. Perhaps it's the kind of thing that you all contemplate, and I'll certainly hustle to, Mr. Chairman, if you'll share some of that with me, I can put it into the minutes. I'll hustle to get that out to you guys. You contemplate it and consider it, putting together a vote of what you guys recommend. And I believe the council is quite amenable to having another workshop with us in which we present results of what you have been discussing here.
Right.
And this could be among the things that you recommend to them, and then from there, council can then direct Mr. Krokoff and then turn to me on what to do.
Yeah. And I would think we would also want to put some priority to that, right? Do we think that, hey, low-hanging fruit, the easiest one is the babysitting CPR. We have a facility. It seems like a straightforward path. Volleyball could be a little bit tougher to do. Let's try and knock off this one first.
Right.
We think teen basketball is more important than volleyball, or the other way around.
Right.
Let's push these, some priority to it.
So I probably should start with the end in mind. So one of the goals from today's meeting, for me at least, and I'm open to hear all your goals, is Jim's right. I have discussed with a few council people one-on-one that we would bring a recommendation about the MOU and programming back to them in a work session. They seem to be receptive to it because it would be less intimidating than making a recommendation with option A, B, C, and they get a meeting and they got a vote and there's no discussion amongst us. So that first meeting went so well that we could go back to them with a MOU summary, option A, option B, and these things in this order. And if you're going to go look for fields, here's some highlights, and we could put that whole thing on the table as a presentation to them, and then there'd be some discussion. So when they then get to the meeting to vote, they've heard it, not just read it and seen it. So they're, I think, quite amenable to having a second meeting where we actually have a workshop to discuss it. So we'd all come in one night and do the same thing for 10, 15 minutes of that
That's
time.
helpful to
So that would be,
understand. Yeah.
that's where this is going. So
Got it.
it doesn't have to be absolute and buttoned up tight, but it's got to be at least
Comprehensive. to where
comprehensive
we can
enough
present it
that
to
we can
council.
present
Sure.
it to them
Sure.
with a few questions like, hey,
Okay.
we thought about this, and here's the thinking of how, for example, how we said volleyball is ahead of basketball or vice versa.
Whatever the
so
case
that they're understanding our thought process in that. So that's where we're headed with all this discussion. So we can come back as we're crafting this MOU. So as we looked at the MOU and Jim portrayed some numbers in the presentation, and I shared with you all some comments, there is an opportunity in the MOU to reshape it from its current form. In doing so, we can do everything from the extremes of blowing it up and never having one to keeping it in its current form. I don't think keeping it is palatable. I don't know anybody here is really for keeping the MOU in its current form because it's got an open-ended financial liability to the city. And as Steve has shared with us in prior meetings, Steve Krokoff, it doesn't, if we keep spending more money in the MOU, we'll never have money to squirrel away to capital projects for fields, right? So cost savings of the current MOU seems to be one objective. Blowing it up just seems like it penalizes a lot of people and creates war between the cities, and people are caught in the mix. Our residents going to their city for programs, some of theirs coming to ours, and we'd hear all the war stories. So those two options off the table, we're now left with something in the middle to reshape this. I've got a few ideas, but before I start throwing mine out, I'm going to turn and let you guys talk for a second and tell me thoughts about how you might want to change the MOU, what out of the workshop preparation for tonight's meeting, what are your thoughts about what do you see the MOU looking like? And we'll see if we can craft a.
So I had a question. So, in thinking I think you had 4 options that we were looking at originally. And I'm sure if there's something else out there, we can put it out there. But one of the things in there said, removing the 1.5 multiplier. Is that really an option? I was just curious about that. I mean, because some things are, sure, we can present it, but what's the percentage chance that it's even there? And I didn't see if there was what the savings would be after that 1.5.
Yeah, so good question, Joey. And I can't speak to what the negotiating environment is because it's not for this is a staff and city manager, council person discussion between cities. But it's certainly one item identified as costing, a significant cost driver of the current MOU to the tune of 160-some thousand hours a year in this current year.
That's the 1.5 multiplier.
That's 1.5. That's just the value of the 1.5 multiplier.
Okay.
So if you're just thinking outside the box, can I, if I had a perfect world and a receptive negotiating partner, would I want to try and renegotiate that out? As they may be listening tonight, sure, I want to renegotiate that out, right? I want to try. There's significant savings associated with that.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're at. That certainly would leave that to staff and to the city manager to go begin that exploration. But it's something, certainly, if we think that that's where we want to start, that's certainly something we could say is plank in the road is start with this.
Okay.
It's one of our options. Other thoughts, comments?
Chairman, I'll give you mine, and it evolves around 3 things. It's one, and in no particular order, the protection that we've got to provide our program partners, right? So as it stands today, right, we're subsidizing the fee for Milton residents to play a sport in the city of Alpharetta for a sport that we currently offer, right? That is a problem with our program providers. They were very clear about that, right? So that's number one. Number two is the MOU as it is written today is a cost burden to the city of Milton, and it has no cap, right? So it can continue to increase based on the level of engagement of Milton residents in Alpharetta programming, right? So something difficult to budget for. And number three, keeping in mind the benefit to Milton residents, right? So they are a beneficiary of the MOU, which we got to be mindful of. Of the options that you have graciously provided us,
Outline of options.
an outline of options, where based on the feedback of the program providers, council, other Milton residents, where I'm leaning is a modification of the MOU that would, and it's not explicitly stated in one of the options here, but it's the removal of the 1.5 multiplier and a removal of the co-offered programs. So that one's not explicit in here. That was kind of my 3C, which does not exist on your papers, but it was the remove the 1.5 multiplier as a burden to Milton, and times have changed. I don't think that multiplier is applicable anymore, and at least removing the co-offered programs. To me, that's a good starting point of negotiation. In my opinion, an acceptable outcome at the end of the day is the full removal of the MOU versus where we are today. So as we negotiate, and this won't be me, obviously, but we've got to realize that this will be a negotiation. I don't know the players involved. I don't know the personalities. I don't know a lot of the history involved. But we just got to be mindful that when we come to the table with options, we've got to be ready to accept certain outcomes. And so we just got to be mindful of what we're willing to live with prior to going into, I guess, a recommendation back to council.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's.
The only, I guess counterpoint or devil's advocate to the idea again of protecting our program providers, does that create a flood of people that we can't handle, right? So there's 300 kids playing baseball in Alpharetta. If half of them say, hey, I would rather come over here, do we have the capacity to take 150 more kids in Hopewell baseball? My understanding is no, right? If all 300 of them come, so by subsidizing, that program some, we're giving our residents another option, right? If we can't take them all back, then we're in this limbo lane. And baseball is probably the one that's the biggest, right? Oh, basketball would probably be the other one, right? Is that would we have the capacity if all of our residents came back because that MOU is gone? It would put the city in a bad position because now you can't take us, right? You don't allow us to go over there or aren't helping us to go over there. And
It's a fair question. Let me ask you this, though, Jason, and I don't know the answer to this. So if Milton or if Alpharetta were to hit capacity, what would they do? If Johns Creek were to hit capacity, what would they do? Would they subsidize to go to another city or county?
But we're already at, so I mean, the resident and what the elected official is going to hear is that, hey, you took away this MOU on me, and now you don't have a place for me to play, so now I have to pay an extra $200 to go over there because you don't have a place for me to play. Right? And that's just what
But I'm not so sure that's the role for Milton to play.
Right.
What right do they have, or should I have upon my city to subsidize me to play in another city's organized sport?
Well, the other side is if we're,
I guess as a Milton resident, I would not have that expectation of the city.
100%, but it's already been there, right? That expectation has already been set.
So go back, Jim, remind everyone, so the MOU's created to get us access to North Park, right? For football and softball
So there you go.
players.
You go back to the intent and objective of the MOU.
So the objective is to subsidize Milton residents to participate in a sport not offered in their city, by their city, but in their city.
Yes.
And had close to 50% Milton residents. in
So it
participation.
varies
And
by
that's-
numbers. The other thing that the baseball example is clouded a little bit because kids went to graciously Wills Park or Alpharetta Youth Baseball, accepted our players when Bell was closed, at no additional cost. And some people just
never
chose,
came
they
back.
liked it and they stayed.
Do we have a number on that? Do we have numbers where we can see how many kids did come back, or did they age out?
We'd have to.
There's no data.
No data.
Excuse me, there's no data on who came back.
Right.
Okay.
So like currently recreational baseball or last year's numbers was 625 in total in recreation and select spring. 329 was Alpharetta. That's about half. 172 were Milton. 124 were others. So they're out of city.
I do want to say this to what Jason is saying, and you know this too. We're down to one practice a week.
So the question is, could the program, if absorb 172 kids, right? That'd be the question.
Yeah.
What do we pay the city of Alpharetta for those 172 kids on a yearly basis, I guess?
$19,000 and some change, if I'm reading.
Okay. No, I was just saying, yeah, I mean, like you said to the point earlier.
I'm sorry, is that before or after the multiplier?
It's before the multiplier.
So
Yeah.
30,000.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I mean, I don't know what the cost to build baseball fields are, but if you're going to get all those back, and if we're going to continue to grow, do you accept the fact that, okay, we can't provide maybe immediately, but in 3 years we can have those fields, or 2 years we can have?
And Jim, you made a good point. I mean, you could pay based on registration, do a rebate to a Milton resident if and when we hit
I
capacity.
have never said that.
Yeah.
Well, someone said that. Okay, I won't blame that on you.
Right.
But it was a novel idea that if and when we hit capacity, and then you need to go play in an Alpharetta program, you provide a registration, proof of registration and payment.
A rebate mechanism
And then we
is
rebate
certainly,
some- right.
certainly a viable solution. The fact of the matter of the 172, like anything else, some are going to choose to stay put, and some are going to say, well, if you make me pay, they're price sensitive and they're going to run back, and so you don't know the right number of how many come back.
Yeah.
Baseball's got to your point, Jason, the biggest number of kids in flux.
And
Work's moving to enhance baseball fields, so there might be some of that capacity could be met in the near term, and we certainly know that in the fall there's room because we got the baseball field at Hopewell Middle that sits modestly unused often. So
I've used it a bunch of times.
yeah, so guys looking for their second practice go to Hopewell Middle and
Yeah.
steal all the practice time they can get for their second touch of a practice during
But Jason,
the week.
you're right. Residents are going to come forward and say that. So we should be prepared. Council should be prepared.
Right.
But without the history, without the context of why the MOU is in existence, you're going to jump to that. But with a little bit of context to that and a little bit of history of why that existed in the first place should help in that messaging.
So again, as I said when we were talking about goals, if my goal of good shepherds of the city of Milton's tax dollars that all 38,000 people contribute is to make sure that our fields are full, then I shouldn't be borrowing some of the tax money to subsidize them leaving.
Right.
Because I'm not filling what I have. If they leave by choice and it's offered in both places, that's a choice. That's buying Dunkin' Donuts versus Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, and so again, I'm just playing the devil's advocate on this. Is the idea is that we just had the discussion that we're at capacity, or we feel we're pretty close to or at capacity, right? And if we say that we are, as a rec program, is to get as many kids playing as possible. The idea that we subsidize them to go to the MOU or through the MOU to give them an opportunity to play is so, hey, you can't play with us because we're at capacity. We are subsidizing you, right? And, so again, that's a devil's advocate.
Yeah, no. So let's go through this list just because let's make sure we're all clear about what we think are impacts of the matched programs. Okay. So baseball, we're talked about. There could be an influx of a significant number of baseball players, challenge capacity. We know there's ways to make it work that are less than perfect at Bell for scheduling in baseball, that are less than the quality situation you want, but short term could certainly, there's room for absorption. Football in the matched programs, when we remove the subsidy, my gut tells me the number of people choose not to, but complain about the increase in costs.
Yes, I don't
Right,
think you're
that's
going to see
just my
a flood
gut
into
on that
football.
program. So lot of angst, but less capacity
Yep.
problems. There's room in football to expand the football program,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons we're putting the fences up. Boys lacrosse. You guys are more familiar with boys lacrosse. Which way does that program shift?
Oh, there's nobody that.
Anybody
We
speak?
would have the potential of getting 9 kids.
9 kids.
I was going to say, I don't think we have kids
Yeah.
that are playing
The-
over there.
the boys lacrosse is the only one that is upside down in that the majority of people are here. Now, what could happen is boys lacrosse could lose some kids because kids say, I'm not going to, Alpharetta kids could say, I'm not going to pay the extra money to go to Milton.
Right.
But I don't think many of those come over, do they? From,
Do you have the stats right there?
So fiscal 17, spring boys lacrosse, 107 players, 105 are Alpharetta, 1 is Milton, and 1 is other.
107, over in their program.
In their program.
So we had 2 Milton kids that are over there.
Two kids, I thought it was 9.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
wait a minute. So do we offer boys lacrosse?
yeah.
We do, yeah, of course.
So where are our 2 kids? Where is our boys lacrosse numbers? It's those 2?
So there's
confused.
roughly, the Milton program has probably 200 kids in it, and the Cambridge program has probably 220, 230, right? So probably 400, somewhere in there between the 2 programs. Does that sound about
You
right?
have that?
For
stats right?
boys?
For boys, yeah.
Help me find that on.
Yeah, there was a statistic on that. I saw it on one of the slides. If you come, whenever, I remember it was a combo of the boys.
Give or take, there's
It
probably.
actually, I think it did say Cambridge/Milton.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
just the way it's set up through North Georgia, there's a Cambridge board and a Milton board. I guess if you take in the Kings Ridge there as well, there's another team, you might be pushing 500.
559. No.
Look at that.
Yeah,
So what
that's
is the
2
line
seasons.
item in this? What is the line item in this fall boys lacrosse? Oh, this is their fall boys lacrosse. Right. So it is our 2 kids. Got it. So on the issue of boys lacrosse, no real.
impact.
The world doesn't shake.
Nobody's making that.
But again, you could see people leaving our program to go back to Alpharetta.
Yeah, we don't know. So wait a minute.
Do we
Oh,
have
yes,
any?
we do.
So we're saying we have Alpharetta kids in our program?
Yes, I
I
can tell you
believe we
that
do.
number. Sorry, you're right, because it's in here. So out of city, non-resident 67 of 559
On the boys' side?
on the boys' side.
I bet that's heavy Kings Ridge.
You said that's 2 seasons, so it could be
Fall and spring.
30 and 30, or maybe 40 and 20.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so you're
That's mostly the Kings Ridge, just because they're playing with their team.
Could be that
and,
too, because I see Kings Ridge listed in here.
Yep, that's a
Big
Kings
piece of
Ridge.
it, yep.
I mean, typically, there's a gentleman's agreement across most of the lacrosse is that if somebody's districted to your program, you stay within your program, right? So if you're going to Milton High School, if you want to play Cambridge, we're going to encourage you to play at Milton High School. They typically do the
Right.
same thing.
Stay in the
Stay
same
within,
place.
Yep, stay within your,
Basketball, Jim, you're probably more familiar with basketball than. So halftime sports totals ran 426 kids, non-residents ran 38. Basketball on the boys' side from Alpharetta, boys and girls winter was 588 people total, of which 195 were Milton people.
was how many total?
There were 588.
So a third?
On their best, so we're.
Yeah, third. So to your point, if the 195 wanted to come over,
We don't have much.
Tim would have his hands full, right? Is that how we interpret that, Jim?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
If there's 195 Milton residents in the Alpharetta program, that would be a challenge to Kim.
Yeah, but again, you're not going to have everyone come over. There will people who will
Correct.
choose to pay the difference because they're enjoying the experience they're having in that program.
Right.
The MOU, as I recall, was when the economy was just terrible.
That's
And it
nice,
was
too.
just, and it was temporary, if I recall. It was, we were eventually going to get these things. And I think we should just.
Well, and that was the prompting of the capping of the fee,
Right.
of the out-of-city fee,
And I think
because it
if
used to
we
be a
just
percentage, right?
Try to identify the one that's going to blow everything up. I just keep on coming back to North Park of something we can just go, hey, if we can just continue to have some agreement that Alpharetta runs a program that is truly at North Park, that Milton residents would still get a break. Is that possible? Is that a thought?
Well,
That's
I
would be
mean,
what, football, softball, and
The only, yeah, I mean, just.
swimming, maybe? It could over, oh, no, that's Will's. So just football and softball.
if you look at it, again, first of all, I don't think anyone who's in this room at this moment is going to be involved in
Oh, yeah.
negotiation. Okay, that's first point, okay? So recommendations is what council is looking for.
Okay.
Right.
All right, that's number one. Number two, we could, I'm going to pull an idea out of the air. What if we offered Alpharetta, scrap the MOU, okay? But what we'll do is we'll split the costs of operating North Park. Okay, but then there's just free exchange in all programs with no settlement at the end of the
Parks
year.
with no walls.
Okay. Now, I'm just making up an idea. Okay, but if we did that, then we know it's going to be $400,000 a year, and we know that becomes a fixed cost. But then there's no more uncertainty every year, and there's, it's not a variable anymore. It's this is how it's done. I mean, you could go to that extreme.
Yep.
You could go to the extreme of trying to cafeteria list as compared to the buffet, right? But it still comes down to the other party has to agree to this.
Right.
Oh,
No
So
doubt.
all these recommendations were thrown out here as ideas and tact to take. Ultimately, the council is looking for you guys to recommend to them what's important.
Can I be so direct as to ask, just so we can move this along?
Yeah, please.
Is there anybody opposed to just terminating the MOU if that is what it comes to through negotiations?
So-
is there anybody opposed to terminating the MOU?
I will, so I can lead there. I would say I'm not opposed to it. I'm saying that I think that there would be blowback from people, a lot of folks. I think that the folks, there would be the vocal. If my thought would be one is there some way to do some partnership, this Parks Without Borders, how do we work together, right? And if in lieu of that, then we go to the idea of this rebate, right? We're not offering it as there. For $600,000, we can find a part-time person to come process this paperwork so it's not adding additional work for you and still save $550,000, right? In the MOU,
It wouldn't
we
say
still,
550 because then you still got to pay whatever the cumulative total of the out-of-city existing fees are.
yes.
Right.
But so there'd be some, right? By just saying, hey, if you would like this rebate, you want to play over there, we'll still offer it to you. Right? So you're still offering the same thing to the city.
And I agree. We're going to come up with options that make it more fair for Milton.
Correct. And
Right?
there would be some savings.
And we'll come up, but I'm just trying to calibrate all of us so we know where the end goal is, right? If we know we can walk away from it, fine. Now let's come up with options to present to council.
Correct. So I always walk away as an option and blow it up and start over and figure out where the pieces fall. I think as it's an agreement that's morphed and changed, an attempt to renegotiate pieces of it, not with the idea that it's going to be another 5 years that it lasts. And we're going to be careful because everything we're saying is for today's public meeting. But similarly, it could be a pullback by us a little bit to change the nature of the MOU and the relationship for the two, because I think there is some value to having an MOU because it causes you to come to the table and negotiate. And as resources move in and out of cities, perhaps we find fields that don't exist today that we can throw at the MOU. Well, then you've got a vehicle, a platform for which to negotiate some more favorable terms to both parties, right? So I think we've gotten to a point where we really, to Jim's point, it's reached a point where we could cap it, but it produces no savings to invest in future fields.
Right.
So one of my thoughts is we've got to do something that creates a savings. Right. So we say to the council, we found you some money. If you do these things and you save this bucket of money and you squirrel that away from the Christmas fund for the next 5 years, you've found the money to pay for what you need to do. If you blow it up, I think too many pieces change. Not against the rebates. It certainly saves money off the multiplier, but it sets up the wrong tone between the two cities for going forward about negotiating future park space between the two.
Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to build it back up again.
I agree. I think we're at rock bottom at the price tag we're at.
The rebate, I say, as opposed to, the idea of we just walk away and it's done, right? I think that's the option that you give your city, right? Sure. But I think that or your residents, to some extent, what we would hope they would be somewhat willing to negotiate that MOU $600,000 that they're getting has some impact to their line of the Parks and Rec Department, right, in their budget.
Right.
So that they would be in some interest to preserve some amount of those dollars to their city would be their willingness to negotiate.
Any idea? So this number is a big number to the city of Milton, the 461 and the current payment that's going to be planned. And Jim, for everybody's benefit, any idea, ballpark, budget of Parks and Rec of the city of Alpharetta? Total budget? Just put it in context. And then you could tell us our number.
Total budget of Parks and Rec, I believe, is $12 or $14 million.
Something north of 10.
They've also taken on art and historical components as well.
So north of 10. Your budget for the city of Milton runs in the magnitude of?
The M&O?
Yeah.
1.1 million.
1.1 million, and we're talking about a line item about 461 to the city. Just kind of put it, and that's why we're having the discussion. Let me close out on the three other match programs as we're talking about where's the balance of the kids, Milton versus Alpharetta, because I think this is flavoring discussion, basketball and lacrosse, big ones. The next three, I think, are all new to Milton, so as such, really weigh towards Alpharetta, right? Swim team, swimming, and tennis. Most of these programs, because they're new to us as a program, small number of participation relative to the Alpharetta program. We put walls up and there'd be some kids pinched, right, or parents who are playing in those other programs. I'm looking at year-round tennis lessons in Alpharetta. There's 196 Milton residents of 1,104 total.
Well, again, is that residents or is that registrations?
This is probably registrations.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if one person registered 109 times,
right,
that would show up as 109
That's right.
registrations. So remember, we're talking about registrations.
I think this is participants. This is that sheet. The sheet I'm looking at is participants. So it's a fair number that we couldn't accommodate. Tennis would be a one sport that if they all jump back, would be a struggle.
Yeah, and again, you take a look at baseball, that 301 kids, but that was spring and fall, okay, over baseball. So let's say that that's really only 150 kids. If half of those kids come back, that's 75 kids a season coming back. Now, we've looked at this whole concept of capacity planning, and the whole idea is working on optimal capacity. All of you guys have been involved in running sport of some kind, directly or indirectly. You've all seen that you can stretch and take on another 15, 20, 25 kids. I don't think any of you guys have ever turned away a kid. Now, when you start crossing that line into the not optimal, the whole purpose of what is the optimal capacity is so that we can have definitive, hard data that everyone agrees this is the actual number that is the best for this sport on this type of facility, pool, court, whatever. But you can handle more, but it becomes less optimal and takes away from the experience. So you take a look at roads. and I know I'm going off on a tangent here for a minute, but we've allowed more and more developing of houses, which creates more and more traffic, which creates more delays on the roads. And in terms of the service level on roads, things are starting to deteriorate. And so the city, over time, has been responding. And the biggest way you're seeing responding is with the roundabouts. That helps gets traffic moving faster. So as the service level in a sport starts to deteriorate because we have additional kids or people playing, the city has shown over time, and as funds become available, they do respond. So do you see the analogy I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we start taking on more people in our programming, the pendulum may swing over here for a little bit, but that'll cause the demand, because then we'll have the data that shows we really are lacking in field space. We have maxed out what we've got.
Right.
Okay? So the first goal, my first goal, is to fill up every field. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be, if we wind up taking field 3 of baseball and convert it to cricket, and we fill it up with cricket, well, I field a field.
Right.
Because the taxpayers paid for these facilities. I'm trying to maximize use. I want to make sure we're putting out programming that is what the community wants. But right now, I've got a couple of IGA fields. Some folks don't like using the IGA fields because they don't have the bathrooms, don't have lights. But you know what? If it's that or not play, people are going to play. So my goal is to serve as many citizens as possible of Milton and fill it up. Alpharetta, when they fill up on their basketball, they close the door. Right? If we get to the point that we have to close the door because we're at capacity, we cannot squeeze another kid in. That's the proof. Right. That we need more of what we're trying to do here.
So
does it all make sense?
Yep. So maybe for this, I think we're winding down now. We're going to start to formulate some ideas. I've heard a number of thoughts. I'm going to kind of throw them out in some bullets, and maybe it's not an option A versus B. Maybe it's a list of negotiating points that we want to make sure we include, that we're telling the council these are where you should go attack the table. And maybe that's the simpler way of doing it than A's and B's. I can speak to a couple of some points. So I think Phil touched on it. I think we all would agree that if I could remove the multiplier, then that would certainly be a good place to start, right? In the current agreement, removing the multiplier is a savings of about $135,000 a year. That's a big number. And that would leave all programs covered. Let's just take the agreement, take that off take the multiplier off the table, and let people play parks without walls, and between the two cities, and a lot of savings. I think if we're going to follow our goals, as Jim's saying about filling fields, and doing the best there, then I think one of the things we've got to consider, and it's been talked about us before as well as with council, is the idea of removing the matched programs. Where we co-offer programs, we wouldn't include them in the MOU. They really weren't intended to be there, and they've kind of morphed. So I think, as we're creating bullet points, removing the matched programs, and I'm shaping this up as it's ultimately going to be a recommendation that we want to throw to council. We'll all vote on, but I'm making notes. So remove the multiplier, remove match programs. Removing match programs is a savings of about $83,000 a year to the city. If you just did that item alone. There's some duplicative between option A and option B, but if you just took the seven programs out.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just, for the purpose of being precise, okay, if you drop the 50% multiplier, that loses that amount of dollars. The data I gave there of taking out the matched program of 83 included the 50% multiplier.
Yes.
So it's not 83 plus 135.
Correct.
All right, so 83, that would have been about, what, 58, 59? I'm trying to do math in my head real fast.
Right.
So if you drop the multiplier and you drop the,
You'd be about 195, 200, right?
yes.
Right.
And I just-
Not
I-
225.
I'm not trying to be picky, I
Yep.
just want to make sure. I
Everybody's
presented
clear.
data accurately.
No, there's one, the one world environment is the 135 includes everything and it's the 1.5, but as you start to roll down, it would, yes, correct. The 1.5 has to come out of the 83, if it didn't exist. If it exists, then, and option A doesn't work, then you can start from a point of 83 to start figuring out some savings. Any one of these items, I think, that would produce cost savings, my third bullet for what we're considering options would be, we would direct council to invest this money in capital funds, right? We want to set aside to look at fields, future building of fields. So the goal would be increase some savings and generate some monies. Both of these options leave all the other programming that our residents are taking advantage of fully available to them, right?
Chairman, what
Yeah.
about, since North Park is in Milton, what about for another option for them to discuss that the softball program and the football programs that are offered there are mutually shared and there's no fees paid back and forth for those two programs?
Yeah, so the challenge is softball's not offered by us, so
Right.
that's the reason it's there, covered under the MOU. Football is we're trying to fill our football fields. I don't want to single out football to be
Right.
subsidized and baseball's not, or vice versa, right? That wouldn't be so I think my mind says all in on, if you're cutting out one sport that's shared, all sports that are shared are out. And so we would be building walls around our parks to say it's a conscious choice to leave a football program or a basketball program or a boys lacrosse program in our city to go to another city. That's a conscious choice. Yep.
Mr. Johnson, if I can just give you a picture of perspective. In the summer of 2012, when this idea of a shared first came up, at the time I was not an employee with the city. I was the Parks and Rec chairman. I was the Scotts the Husky for Alpharetta, who was sent to present this idea to Milton. At the time, Milton had 4 fields at Bell Memorial Park, a failed basketball program, and they were in the process of starting MOUs with the schools, but none had been completed. That's where it was at the time. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a football program. Right. We had baseball. That was all we had.
Right. No, the only reason I bring it up is just because it's within the city limits of Milton, really, is the only reason I'm saying is that a talking point, because it's not really Alpharetta.
No, it is.
That's Alpharetta.
Well, that is Alpharetta, but you know what I mean. It's surrounded.
I know. It's
Yeah,
It's a donut hole.
That's why we're paying 1.5, because we're not spending enough money on our parks. So I got 1.5, got the remove the match programs, tell council direct this money as a capital funds. Jim, a question for you. So one of the reasons this has grown is by the unchecked growth of programs by the city of Alpharetta. How difficult, what are your thoughts, comments around what would it look like if we wanted to sort of check them so that if Alpharetta offered a new program, we would be looking at it before we...
That would have to be something that would have to be negotiated above my pay grade. And
Yeah.
they'd be willing to have to go along with it.
Because it just seems to me that it's some
Because
of the items that
we
are
can
in the
slice and
budget.
dice this, for the, shall we say, the concept of, it's the right thing to do, but you don't want to create something that becomes extraordinarily difficult to do. One of the ideas, and I've had some candid discussions with my counterpart in Alpharetta, the idea of that portion of kids in Deerfield corridor who are districted to Alpharetta High School, that would be extremely difficult to try and manage that. Because neither city has systems that are that precise in being able to do that proactively. There's things that we would like to do, but then you have to say, okay, at the staff level, is that reasonable?
That was Ron's comment back early on about could you change the extension of city lines to mean high school lines?
Yeah, because there's an area of Roswell as well.
And so then you got Roswell, where
Yep.
you have Roswell kids playing girls lacrosse in the same age grade in the same school, paying two different amount of monies.
Yeah,
to
because
play.
there's a Roswell area that is zoned Milton.
Right. So what you're saying, Jim, is that today the challenge exists that it'd be difficult to identify out the high school zone to the participants, so that if you use the high school zone as the tripwire for whether you're out of city or not, that's not practical. Is that what you're saying? Deerfield in the Roswell corner.
It's nothing's impossible.
Right.
It's just that some things are harder to do than others.
So maybe it's a recommendation for them to consider.
Yeah.
And maybe.
Because I'll tell you right now, if Mr. Krokhoff, on direction from council, directs me to find a way to carve out for those kids going to Alpharetta, we'll do it. It's just the time it takes to do something like that and the resources to do it. Nothing is impossible.
Right.
It's just
Well, and those
I'm
people
trying
would-
to give you some heads up of what could be some pushback points.
Right. So those people would self-identify, perhaps. That might make it a little easier, and then you'd just be in a validation mode or something. But
School ID.
yeah, but I hear you. So a fourth item, as I'm going through this list that we're crafting, is some reflection of the high school city lines. Thinking particularly about Deerfield and the Roswell corner. Is that any place else I need to be thinking about? Nobody else? No other high schools that we're crossing lines with? We could always add them. We didn't talk about it in this discussion, but we talked about it in the joint workshop, which was the city commission, as we discussed a transition from a percentage of the registration to the city for commission. We talked about a flat fee. If you guys remember, we talked about $25 flat fee. As I was thinking about thoughts for today's meeting and ideas, I think we need to tell the council we're all big fans of the $25 fee. At least that's my take. It makes life simple.
Except
Except for tennis.
it doesn't work for tennis.
So we'll have to come back to that. But I have another idea.
And basketball too, I believe.
Basketball, it's paying us $15 now.
It's an increase, I think, based on the data that we looked
It'd
at.
be an increase for the Milton Steelers. It'd be an increase for basketball. We have heard from tennis, it would be a dramatic impact on tennis.
Could we, if we agree that $25 is the right number, could we, Jim, could we split it? Could we, I remember in the discussion, a comment made about the commission monies of all programs, of all Milton residents paid to the city's budget is $67,000. And we said that's a pittance to our parks department. So could we, if we were trying to be savings oriented, could we say the commission is $1,250 a person and another $1,250 goes to a dedicated capital fund?
That would still be $25.
Still be $25.
I think we would hear some concern from the Milton Steelers and the halftime sports basketball in things like lacrosse and baseball. I think it kind of works out because they had multiple tiers based on ages.
Yep.
But we need to be very careful about how we approach this because with tennis, you're now talking about a price that becomes exorbitant, and they don't even get to practice. All they do is play.
Yeah, and so not only tennis, but I would think with swim with the new program, right? Any new program that could become a difficult, and again, if you just, I think about lacrosse, there's a program that's $75, and if you're paying $25 for that kid to the city, right? That's 50%, and the idea is you're trying to get new kids involved, right? If you're paying $25 for a kid that's playing U13 or U11, and he's paying $200 or $200, right? That $25 isn't a big, right? If you have, if halftime decides to run something for little kids to try and introduce them to basketball, you want to make it cheap and an easy price point. That $25.
And that's just it.
You're
You're disadvantaged if you offer a low
Price.
registration rate
Correct.
and have a flat fee of 25. I guess I question, what problem are we trying to solve for? We took it from 30% down to 15%. When we met with the program providers, they seemed pretty happy about a 15% flat fee because it allows them to budget.
One of the issues is that the fees registration base, which doesn't reflect anything to the city. The cost of football being different than the cost of baseball, than the cost of lacrosse. So as a percentage of registration, is artificial in number.
Well, how does
theory,
25, how does a
doesn't
flat
solve that
dollar
either.
amount solve for that?
And we also have a program provider that doesn't charge anything.
Right.
So again, what problem are we solving for, and how does $25 solve it?
The whole
The
discussion.
percentage, I'm sorry, Jim, just one thing. The percentage keeps it fair and equitable, in my opinion. Everyone has to pay the same percentage. I'll go back to your example. If a swim provider is going to charge a registration fee of $50, then you mean to tell me they got to pay 50% of that back to Milton?
But if a football player has to pay $450 to play in a program because of their uniform costs, no uniform in swim, there's one uniform in swimming and there's no pads, so you're paying a percentage of the registration
most
to the
of
city that's based off of nothing it has to do with their time.
Well,
on
then maybe the
field.
registration shouldn't include uniforms.
Well, so like on the
It doesn't.
on the basketball, just on the lacrosse side, uniforms are separated out so
That should be separated out.
very specific for that
That's
reason.
offer a program for free.
Right.
There is no.
So when they offer for free, the 15% causes another negotiation.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah, but should we be changing everything because of Milton Steelers offering a free
We
program?
cannot devalue the city and what it brings to the table to appease certain individuals. Because there is a
What-
value
one
to
of-
what the city offers.
Then maybe if you offer a free registration in your program, then you have a flat fee of $25.
I think one of the situations that the commission represents to some people a cost of accessing the field, right? And that the city's giving you this field, and in exchange you're going to give me some bucket of money. Some people think that that has a real big value, and that when you change your field schedule, the value should be perceived as so great that you're not motivated to change your field schedule with no penalty. So we could use the ice hockey rink arena, which is one that's been brought up as an example, that if you decide you don't want to practice on Sunday afternoon, you got to go sell it or pay it. And there's a movement or discussion point that says you want to value the field space so high, the 15% that are paid in, that you would never change your schedule without offering it on the free market, finding somebody to fill it. Whereas today the model is, if I don't use my field practice time slot, I'm really harming no one and no foul for no one. When in fact the reality is somebody could have used the field space. Everything from another provider to down to some mom and dad, if we knew that it was available and it was managed that way, right? Family could have a picnic on it, perhaps. So the piece that's missing is the perceived value by the providers at times and their subsequent coaches of the value of the field space. So that's the problem that we're really trying to address.
I agree, and I'll go back to the city manager's objective around his proposal, albeit complicated and probably difficult to manage. I just don't know how the $25 changes that behavior. In my opinion, the percentage is more fair and equitable to the providers than a flat rate. And I'm not so sure the $25 changes behavior in terms of respecting field usage.
I might not disagree on that at all. I think what it does do is puts a fee per participant for field access, call it whatever you want, wear and tear, user fee. But it does create some indebtedness to the field, and it does it for all providers regardless of the registration fee.
It's a cost reduction to the majority of the program providers. So in my opinion, there's less incentive. It's a cost savings to the Milton Steelers. There's a cost savings to them with a $25 per registration. So they have less skin in the game.
To use that.
How does that change behavior? How does that make them feel more compelled to use the field when they're actually getting a price decrease in what they're paying Milton?
They're not getting a decrease. They're actually getting an increase in their program.
Right now.
Yeah, the
Steelers would
now,
get the increase.
Don't forget, you're looking at 2017 data. The negotiated price, because the city of Milton and sat down with the Milton Steelers, their position was they're not charging anything, so they didn't want to pay any commission. A negotiated price of $18 and change was negotiated for this year, for contract for this year. And that was just negotiated.
Mm-hmm.
So at $25, that would be they would be one of the programs affected by a price increase. Swim team is paying 21, so 25 would be a $4 increase, things like that. But Phil, I do understand your comment. How does this paying more change the field usage? And that's really what Mr. Krokoff is looking for. He's trying to see if we can come up with something that drives that ties utilization, the tying up of the field to a fee that's paid.
So there was some thought. So the 25 gets close to keeping it whole. That's the simple math, right? So the average of all the 15s, the average of all the 15s comes about to 25. That keeps the thing whole and makes everybody per player. You could create a situation where you could say to a lacrosse team, boys lacrosse program, here's the deal. You've asked for all this field space. We are going to charge you X thousands of dollars for the course of the year to have that field. And if you efficiently use your schedule, and now we're back into the logistics of how to do it, so that they consume 90% of their field time or better, so that if they scheduled it and used it, that counts. If they schedule it and don't use it, that hurts. And if they get to a 90% number, they get a rebate. So now there's some skin in the game for the whole program. So everybody's got an environment. I don't know that we could set the number high enough that it would again reward or incentivize or disincentivize, if that's a word, the program. But that's what we're trying to do. What you're trying to say, the value of that field is like an hour on an ice rink.
Yep.
You've got to do something with it. There's a general perception that the value of an hour on a field, regardless of what shape it is practically worthless. That's the issue that we're trying to, that's the real issue we're trying to solve. I'm not sure we can have that solution before we need to make a recommendation for the MOU for this fall. So if we want to go down a path of chasing really out of the box ways of twisting how we charge field, how we incentivize partners to be efficient with their schedules, that's a different discussion.
And you're saying the $25 keeps us to where we are.
25 keeps the place whole. What I would argue with the city is say, hey, if the 25 keeps us whole, we're good with that, and we can talk about tennis and the council on the side. I would tell the council, squirrel away. If $67,000 to Jim's $1-point-something million budget is not a lot of money, I'd tell them take half the $67,000 set aside. There's another $33,000 that goes on top of the other savings, and we're trying to add up. And pretty close. We're at $200,000 a year of savings in the MOU as it's modified.
This is a silly question, probably because we've had this long conversation about it. But is there anything we would deal with legally having one program under 1% and one program under a flat fee? Is there anything that would say you can't treat different programs? I have no idea.
I don't know.
I don't know that there's a legal issue. However, I think you would get I'm not being treated the same way as you are, and
Yep.
I'm a program partner and you're a program partner. So, for example, let's say we came up with, if your fee that you charge is from $0 to $75, then you just pay a flat fee of, I don't know, 15, right? But you're charging over 75, and so you've got to pay 15%. Well, first of all, if I was a smart program provider, I would just drop my registration fee to $75.
Right.
Pay the 15%, pay just $15, you know, and find another way to make it up. Sponsorship or something like that. I mean, it's not being devious. It's being smart. It's being a businessman. Okay. And let's face it, all these organizations, whether they're a parent-run club like Hopewell Baseball or they're an actual business like Halftime Sports, they have a fiscal responsibility to their own organization to do the best they can financially. I get it. So it would be a very difficult road to go. We're going to say, all right, Mr. Kramer, we're going to charge you 15%. We're going to charge you $10. We're going to charge you $5. We're going to charge you 25%. We're going to charge you, and so on.
There'd be 9 negotiations every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be, there's another reason in support of a.
Oh, I'm sorry. The reason I said that is I thought that's what we were saying in regards to tennis.
Well, yeah.
Did I miss that?
I mean, each program, I mean, the bottom line is there's a different cost for each program.
Correct.
And-
But you're
and-
not
and-
taking that into account with
and-
the
and
flat
we're
fee.
not.
That's
Because,
right.
you know, if it's costing me $500 per kid to do football, and it's costing you $75 per kid to do tennis, cost of tennis balls. They have their own racket. That's their person. That's theirs. But football, I got to do helmets. I got to do football.
But what I heard, but what you could do
Different
is we
cost.
could strip out, we could say to our program providers, your registration is driven off of the the facility you use.
There you go.
Your cost of whatever else goes into that, your coaches, your uniforms, that's out here. Here's the registration as it relates to field. And then you could start to have field-specific fees. So maybe one program's 25 and another one's 5, because tennis courts have different costs than baseball fields. I don't know how you make them all relative, but we could get into a discussion of some creative per person, per sport based on that particular facility they use. So when yoga goes to the Bethwell Center, there's a standard cost of $250 for every person who goes to yoga class. At
Now
Bethwell Center.
that is actually difficult though too, because we're never going to cover all the costs. That doesn't-
And it's not
Right.
intended to cover all the costs. It's not intended to make them pay and that was brought up by council. It's not intended to make them pay in their taxes and
Right.
also pay again as a user. But it is, I can't think of another better word than it is a modest user fee
Yeah.
to the programs to kind of use as a tool to make them better users of the city asset, smarter consumers of it.
And so, well, I guess if we're trying, again, this kind of counter the $25, if I'm Hopewell Baseball, I raise my hand and say, my kids are on that field twice. I have a big program. I'm only on it twice. Football and lacrosse are on there 3 times a week,
Sometimes 4.
sometimes 4. They're paying $25, you know, so I'm paying
That's
$12.50
the
per
question
usage.
of the relative. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're paying, you know, $6 per
Right.
usage. I'm paying double the time to get access to a field.
Right.
And I have more people, right? So I'm really getting hammered on
That's-
this because I have more, I'm using the field better. right?
So
Like-
because of that complexity and because the MOU is staring us with a November timeframe-ish discussion for a recommendation for council to move forward, or otherwise we're going to renew it and be handcuffed for another year. I love this discussion, but I don't think we got enough time in the day to get it done by the time the council's going to make a decision.
I would say that candidly, the MOU, there's an out in the MOU. I mean, each party could give notice that we need to make change. So
But if you're going to make a material change to it, as it relates to, so as it relates to the MOU, we're not talking about our commission fee.
no. The commission fee structure, that issue, what makes November and December kind of important to us is we do renewals in November and
Right.
December.
Right.
Right, so all of them end in December. Are they all on, they're all are on a yearly basis. Do they all just end in,
Every contract
Calendar
ends
year?
December 31.
got it?
At the end
So
of
it's
the
all,
year.
they're all calendar year, not sports year, right? It's not
So
a-
maybe we could, it's early September, maybe we could move the discussion of field-based commission fees, to be politically correct, move that to next month's meeting, chew this up a little more depth. and not-
2 weeks meeting?
In 2 weeks meeting, and not worry about that as a recommendation of the council, because that's more of an internal City of Milton issue, and we can keep that away from the MOU discussion at the moment. Maybe that helps. So we can table recommendations around commissions. I'm okay with that.
I actually think, Mr. Chairman, it'd probably be wise if we're just using this meeting for what's becoming effectively a workshop, talking things through.
Yep,
and
it is.
Don't make any votes tonight because we don't want to rush the judgment. You know, you talk about it, everyone processes it, thinks about it. We're getting together in 2 more weeks. You know, if we get a chance to, what's the phrase? Put it in your pipe and smoke it, or
Yep,
Yeah,
something to that
yeah.
effect.
Lot to digest here.
Okay, I'm good with that. Everybody else good with that? So good discussion.
I'm seeing some outstanding discussion here. This is
So
I've ever seen.
we might reach the logical conclusion of a discussion of unfinished business, and we can leave it as unfinished and take it to next meeting. Do we need a motion to leave it as unfinished, Jim? Or is it by definition, since we're not voting on it, it stays unfinished?
Yeah, I mean, you could move, you could, if you wish, make a motion to just continue the discussion next month, or, you know, it's not finished, we don't have to have a vote,
Okay,
whatever you would like to do.
I can make a motion to continue this discussion
okay.
on the MOUs for the next
Motion
meeting.
by Dave,
I'll
second
second
by Ron. All in favor of tabling the discussion of MOU and commission structure to our next regularly scheduled meeting?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Good. Motion by Dave, second by Ron, to table the unfinished business to next month. That being said, let's move back up to committee reports and put Coach Chill on the hot seat to talk about Steelers for a minute.
Yeah, it's real hot. Unfortunately, we're not able to be at the last meeting. I passed on
Who seconded it?
some information I had to Jim, and I see a vote was taken on the flag football. And when they want to use the field, Sunday afternoons, field 1. Other than that, there's been no change or any more discussion that I've had with them. I will reach out to them this week to see if there's anything new.
Okay.
And if there's anything that Jim may have to add to that, you can do that. But that's where I am with the Milton Steelers.
Fair enough. Baseball.
Nothing to report. Baseball.
Opening day on Saturday.
I do want you all to know, we had a very unfortunate situation happen this past weekend. At the Milton Pool, we were scheduled to have 3 full days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then close the pool down. Saturday morning at about 7 a.m., the main motor for the pool filtration system failed. And we were unable to circulate water. Being unable to circulate water, we were unable to put chemicals in the pool. And I made the decision, I attempted to reach out to Mr. Krokoff, Mr. Lucas, and was unable to reach either of them. And knowing that Fulton County has an ordinance at the county level that a public pool cannot be operated if you're not circulating the water, and also knowing that we did not have sufficient chemicals in the pool to make it safe, I shut the pool down for the weekend. We had quite a few upset people. It was very disappointing. But it was a case of, it was a commercial grade specialty electric motor, and you just can't find one of those on a 3-day weekend.
Nope.
You know, those type, the organizations that sell those are closed on a 3-day weekend. We tried Home Depot, I even tried calling other swim pool management companies that are competitors to the one taking care of us. We tried Granger, we tried ABC Supply, we tried everything we could think of, and the answer was fruitless. On Tuesday, we were able to go down to Electric Motors R Us or wherever the place was and get a proper electric motor, got it installed, and by Tuesday night, We had the pool operating. We were putting chemicals in. So we are going to move forward with a lost Labor Day weekend, and we're going to open the pool again for this coming Saturday and Sunday and then shut it down. The pool itself will not be closed until October timeframe. That's because September, it's still quite warm, and if you put the winterization chemicals in too soon, then they get burned out, and then the pool's unwinterized. Not only is that a best practice, it's something I learned from owning my own pool. Kind of what you call experiences compared to wisdom. So the fire department is going to be using the pool in September. Once the public's done using it, they're going to be using it for training.